In the history of crime, some names echo through time as unresolved questions. At the top of these questions lies Jack the Ripper. Jack was one of the most infamous serial killers of not just his time but also of all time. But to me, as a forensic pathologist, it evokes a much bigger terror, a terror of what was missed. This is the story of Jack the Ripper through the unblinking eye of forensic medicine. We will ask the most terrifying question of all. If Jack was roaming our streets today, how fast will we be able to catch him? Or worse, will we be able to catch him? I am Dr. Aditya. This is Beyond the Blade. Come on, let us learn. London, 1888. Within the glistening heart of the British Empire lay a festering wound, that is, the area of Whitechapel. The streets reeked with open sewage. Cholera was very common. Lodging houses bred disease. And for a city of 5 million, London only had 13,000 police officers. Within 1 square mile of Whitechapel, around 5,000 desperate, destitute women were offering their services as sex workers. These were the forgotten women, the vulnerable, until their bodies started turning up. August 31st, 1888. Mary Ann Nichols, 42, a single mother separated from her husband and forced by destitution into sex work. She was last seen alive by her friend at 2:45 a.m., whereas her body turned up at 3:15 a.m. and it was found by Charles Cross and John Paul, 2 common civilians of London. The next day's Times newspaper reported the incident. A strangely horrible murder, they called it. Her head nearly severed from her body, which was cut into pieces, and one long gash from her pelvis up until her breastbone. The autopsy of Miss Nichols was conducted by one Dr. Rees Ralph Levin, who reported 2 throat slashes, 4 and 8 inches long, both of them starting from just below the left earlobe. The direction of the cut from left of the body to the right of the body indicated that the killer was most probably left-handed, because if you take the left hand and you move it to kill a person, it moves from the left of the person to the right of the person. Her face was bruised, both neck slashes penetrated the vertebrae, a deep, jagged abdominal cut to the breastbone, and the sex organs were mutilated without any evidence of sexual assault. Suspected weapon, a large knife of average sharpness. What if this crime happened today? The scene will immediately be locked down. Nobody would be allowed to enter the scene without proper permission. The bruises on her face, those bruises will be examined for defensive wounds and even to find out whether the killer was a male or a female. The very first cut would have been an unbreakable chain of forensic evidence to catch the culprit. But in 1888 London, none of these technologies existed. The autopsy of Mary Ann Nichols was done, she was laid to rest, and the police were scrambling to find out who was her murderer. But in the shadows, Jack, who just had the first scent of his blood, was secretly planning for his next attack and an escalation. September 8, 1888, Annie Chapman, 47-year-old female. Again, another person who was a destitute and who was also a sex worker, was last seen after 1:35 a.m. without money for lodging, forced back to the streets. Around 5:45 a.m., John Davis found her body, throat cut, face drenched in blood, trunk protruding. Rigor mortis, which is the stiffening of the body which happens after death, had already set in, showing that the death had happened at least 2 hours before the body was found. The autopsy was conducted by one Dr. George Baxter Phillips, and his autopsy revealed very terrifying information. Jagged neck incisions, bruises on both temple and her hands. Crucially, two distinct thumbprints similar to a man's on her upper chest and her neck. Her abdomen was entirely laid open. Intestines severed, lifted out, placed on her right shoulder. Her uterus and appendages, including the posterior third of her urinary bladder, was meticulously removed. Victorian investigators concluded that the killer possessed some sort of anatomical or at least knowledge of butchery. Also, there was a clear escalation in the aggression and the anger of the killer in this particular murder. Today, those two thumbprints will be our golden ticket to the investigation. We will compare the sizes of the fingerprints to already existing fingerprints in the database and also against the fingerprints of criminals who have been convicted for similar crimes in the past, therefore narrowing the pool of suspects. But sadly, none of these technologies were available in Victorian London in 1888. And as the city gripped the terror, another popular person stepped on to the soil of London. It was none other than Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, or as we Indians know him, Mahatma Gandhi. September 29, 1888, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, a young Indian law student, arrived in London. So why does Gandhi suddenly feature in a story about Jack the Ripper? For decades, fringe theories and social media trends have attempted to link the Ripper to individuals of Indian origin, citing vague witness descriptions of a brown-skinned man with a mustache who was the murderer. But the facts are indisputable. Mary Ann Nichols and Annie Chapman both were murdered well before Gandhi stepped onto the London soil. So Gandhi was in London at September 30th, 1888. Jack the Ripper struck twice within an hour. The great double event.
Jack the Ripper strikes again. Read all about it.
On that fateful night of September 30, 1888, Elizabeth Stride, a 45-year-old woman, was seen talking to her male friend, alive and healthy, at around 11 p.m. But around 12:45 a.m., her body, still warm, with her throat slashed, was found in Burner Street. The police system immediately scrambled and found a doctor to examine the body. After Dr. Charles Blackwell examined the body, he opined that the death had happened only 20 to 30 minutes before the body was found, again indicating that the killer might not be far off. The autopsy of Elizabeth Stride revealed a 6-inch single incised neck wound, deepening left to right, and crucially, no other injuries. Theory is that the killer might have been disturbed by someone, and due to the disturbance, he might have fled the crime scene without completing what he had intended to. But even then, sadly, Elizabeth lost her life that night. Today, forensic teams will swarm the crime scene immediately and lock it down. The interruption itself will give us a lot of clues, not just about the crime scene, but also about the psyche of the killer. Fibers, soil, pollen, and microscopic particles linking the killer to his escape route may be found if the scene is swept properly and scientifically. Just 45 minutes after that murder, Catherine Eddowes, a 45-year-old woman, was found brutally murdered not far away in the area of Mitre Square. The release happened just 45 minutes before her death. So basically, when Catherine Eddowes was released, just then the previous murder had taken place. During search of the nearby areas in Goulston Street, a piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron was found in a blood-soaked state, and there was a graffiti on the wall next to the apron piece showing a message that read, "The Jews are the man that will not be blamed for nothing." Scotland Yard, fearing race riots on seeing the graffiti, destroyed the graffiti even before it could be taken photographs of, thereby destroying critical evidence which could have led them to the killer. Dr. Frederick Gordon Brown, who did the autopsy of Catherine Eddowes, describes the horrific scene of the murder. Her face was slashed, nose was cut off, intestines drawn out and placed over her right shoulder. A piece of intestine was kept between her body and her left arm. After the autopsy, Dr. Brown concluded that the perpetrator of these crimes must have deep knowledge about the placement of organs and their methods of removal. He also gave us one more critical piece of information, saying that the mutilations had been done after the death had taken place. So that means the killer did not need to significantly overpower the women in order to cause these mutilations. Today, however, both of these evidences will be gold mines for the investigators. First, the writing on the wall would be analyzed by handwriting experts to build a psycholinguistic profile of who the person might be and what his character traits might be. Also, the blood-soaked cloth will yield DNA. If there is a DNA database available in that particular country, the DNA could be run against pre-existing DNA information, solving the mystery, not within months, not within weeks, but within days. Today, geographic profiling would use the crime scene locations to predict where the killer lived and worked. It would be used to create a comfort zone map under which the perpetrator operated and thereby drastically narrowing the search area. At around 11:45 p.m. on November 8, 1888, Mary Kelly, 25 years old, was seen hanging around with a stout, ginger-haired man. A neighbor had heard her singing a violet from the mother's grave at around 1 a.m., but by 3 a.m., the music had stopped. Next morning, the landlord's assistant, Thomas Boyer, came down to collect 6 weeks of overdue rent. After knocking multiple times at around 10:45 a.m., finding the door to be locked, he peered in through a broken window pane. What he saw inside defied comprehension. He saw Mary Kelly's body excessively mutilated, lying on the bed. Death had occurred 3 to 9 hours before the discovery of the body. The autopsy of Mary Kelly was conducted by Dr. George Baxter Phillip and Dr. Thomas Bond at the Shoreditch mortuary. The scene was beyond grotesque. Body naked, rigor mortis had set in. Time of death was around 2 a.m. The entire surface of the abdomen and thighs were removed, breasts cut off, arms mutilated, and her face hacked beyond recognition. The neck tissues were severed down to the bone. The viscera, uterus, kidney, liver, and other organs were scattered throughout the room, some under her head, others by her feet. Flaps of skin were on a table, and blood saturated blood clothes and also pooled to 2 feet square on the floor and marked the wall. In today's scenario, even if the Ripper had not been caught till now, this single indoor crime would have been his complete undoing. Every surface would be a treasure trove of information. The entire crime could be reconstructed. Blood pattern analysis would reconstruct the entire attack sequence, his movements, positioning, and the weapon trajectory. Luminol would show even cleaned up blood, even if the blood had been cleaned with the help of bleach. Fiber analysis, hairs, skin cells, and countless clear fingerprints from every object the killer touched would be lifted and preserved for future examination. The unique and excessive organ arrangement around the room shows that the killer had a violent mentality and had aggression problems. Today, these traits would be part of a psychological autopsy combined with advanced criminal profiling, which would interpret this as highly ritualistic and deeply personal, meaning the murders had a very deep personal and psychological connection to the murderer. It would paint a chillingly precise picture of his fantasies and compulsions, guiding profilers with unprecedented precision. But in 1888 Victorian England, only the public pressure soared. The commissioner of the city, Mr. Charles Warren, resigned on November 9, 1888, the day Mary Kelly died. Despite interviewing 2,000 people and detaining more than 80 people, there was no conclusive suspect or definitely not a conviction. Jack the Ripper was not caught. He just became an enigma of the history and a story of the past. Not a killer, not a suspect, and not a culprit. It is also important to mention that the Ripper was brash and he was open about liking the killings. There was a letter known as the From Hell letter which was sent to one George Lusk, who was the chairman of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, which had been formed after the first couple of Ripper murders. The kidney would be used to exactly pinpoint who sent out the letter, and it would also be used to directly connect the killer to Catherine Eddowes by matching the kidney to Catherine herself, thereby making a connection between the letter sender, the kidney, and Catherine Eddowes' murderer. In the late 1900s, the FBI built a psychological profile of Jack the Ripper, a male, likely white, 28 to 36 years of age, socially challenged loner with little or no human connections was the psychological profile. Cases were categorized as lust murder targeting genital area and the breasts. Postmortem mutilation showed a ritualistic behavior. The profile was insightful, yes, but was it late? Yes, it was late by a century. If Jack the Ripper walked London streets today or even Chennai streets today, can he escape? Will he be able to escape like he escaped in 1988? So, as a forensic pathologist, I absolutely opine that he definitely will not escape if he roamed the earth today. Every street light is a possible CCTV camera, and every passerby has a mobile phone, GPS, and cell tower triangulation. Fingerprints lifted from any surface will be matched against massive databases worldwide. Trace evidence, microscopic hairs, fibers, skin cells, and dust will tell an unsilenceable story. DNA profiles will be collected from every crime scene and used to build irrefutable links within hours. Detailed psychological profiles, geographic profiling, and forensic linguistics combined with the FBI profile will help in apprehending the criminal whose apprehension would definitely be inevitable. So, will Jack the Ripper get caught today? Absolutely yes. Maybe in a day, maybe in a week, but he will definitely get caught in today's world. Jack the Ripper remains a phantom of history, a chilling reminder of a time period when darkness had very few enemies. But the story isn't about the murders. The story is about the relentless march of science, which today will ensure that nobody can hide from the law under the darkness of ignorance. The horror of 1888 lies in helpless confusion. But today, as a forensic pathologist sitting in Chennai, the only thing that gives me comfort is the cold, hard truths that science provides. The Ripper's identity may be lost forever to the gaslit alleys of Whitechapel. But knowing what we know now, what do you think could be the single most useful piece of evidence which would have definitely unmasked Jack the Ripper? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked our forensic deep dive into Jack the Ripper, please hit the subscribe button so that you do not miss our next case where science unravels the seemingly impossible. Till then, stay safe, stay curious. This is Dr. Aditya signing off on Beyond the Blade. I'll see you in the next one.